And we have two people here that help me, which is great. One is Rebecca Bear, Vice Principal. She helps co-host this to make sure I don't miss anything in the chat and or people as they are admitted. And then, as always, we are very fortunate to have our school board rep, Becky Timchuk, here to help answer any of the big high-level questions that I'm unable to answer. So thank you, Becky, for being here.
You bet.
So really, I just wanted to give a couple updates, which is one, we've had a great fall season. The first 9 weeks, first quarter of the school year is over, which is hard to believe, has been a blur for sure. Really grateful for the kids being back. Yes, we've had ups and downs, just like every school and every district has, but it feels like we're hitting a groove or starting to. Both academically and socially and behaviorally. Our fall sports and activities did fantastic job. Namely, this is the first school that I've ever been a part of that had every single sport represented in the state playoffs. And I think every sport made it to at least the second round, with our girls water polo team reaching second in state. And then our cross-country teams, boys and girls, made it all the way to state, and that's the first time that that's happened. So a lot to celebrate in terms of our athletics. Activities, choir put on a tremendous show in October. The fall play just wrapped up, Noises Off last week, and now they're preparing for the musical in the spring. And then band got second in the region by just a couple decimal points to West Salem, which is a tremendous accomplishment with a year and a half off of performing. So really great things happening at Mountainside. So we're excited to keep that momentum up as we head into the winter season, which starts right after Thanksgiving. We have our basketball games, wrestling meets, swimming meets starting right up. So not much of a break, but excited to see the kids participate in those areas. In addition to that, COVID is starting to level off, it seems. We're having far fewer cases in the building, which is good. And those cases that we are incurring, the quarantining of close contacts is really reducing significantly as well. Probably a product of more vaccinations, of seating charts, of social distancing. And so we're fortunate and happy that that seems to be curbing a little bit as we head into the winter. We may spike again with people going off to their various holiday locations with family and then coming back. So we'll weather that storm these next 2 months for sure. But just know that right now it seems to be, and I think that's nationwide, state of Oregon wide is tending to trend downwards. I see Wendy's asked a question about COVID tests. We took a different approach than some of the schools. Some of the schools more of a passive approach, meaning they put something out saying, if you wanted a COVID test, come to the office. We put it out to everybody. And I think we had about 150, correct me if I'm wrong, Rebecca, I think it was 150 families respond to that. And so we had our first pickup this week, and then we've already had tests being returned yesterday. And I'm not sure of the return rate, but I know we sent out 150 tests to families. So pretty good response. Some of the other schools at the high school anyway, it was far smaller number for that.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah. Hi, Melissa.
Thanks. When should you, my daughter said she didn't know she was supposed to go get one. We did the paperwork, but I know at the other meeting you said that they got their first one and she doesn't know if her paperwork went late, but what day should they get it and return it and where do they go?
Yeah, so the first bout, we hand delivered the test to the kids because that was their first one. In the packet, there was a note that basically said, from here on out, come to the office and then we will give you a test to take home. If she didn't get one initially, then we probably need to talk. Natalie Labossiere, our vice principal, and Sue Niway are sort of heading that effort. So maybe you could drop me an email, Melissa, and then I'll forward it and see where the gap was there.
There were a few students who were not in class at that time. I think they did it during extended periods. So if a student had a pass or if they were, they wanted to hand it directly to the student. So they might have just missed each other yesterday. I know they were delivering them, but I've written down your name. We can double check that.
Yeah. So we'll see, and we don't get the results of that. Obviously, that just comes back to the family for those COVID test results. Let's see what else we've got. Our HERD is going to start up. The HERD is a diverse group of students. It stands for Here Everyone Respects Diversity, and I meet with these kids. You know, the goal is monthly, if not twice a month. They're a committed group of kids that really are passionate about creating climate and culture that's inclusive for all of our students. I've had the most sign up in the history of Mountainside, over 70 kids, which is a great problem to have. But now I'm struggling with, I've never limited the number, but 70 is a lot. And so we're trying to think of what's the best way to approach that. Do we invite all 70? Do we have separate cohorts based on grade level? Do we maybe limit it and then just have representation from each of our diverse groups and have a smaller body? So still kind of forming what that's going to look like. And then the hope is to have our first meeting in December before the break, with the goal being at the end of the year to create a statement of inclusion, basically an ABAR statement that replicates what the district has put out, so that we as a community will have something to tie us into our beliefs around how we treat one another and what's acceptable and what it means to be a MAV here at Mountainside. So that's it was really encouraging to have so many kids interested in taking part in that. And we hope to get it running here pretty soon. Let's see what else. Outside of that, thank you for your patience with the parking lot. Our parking lot is already problematic, and now we've got one whole lane that's not a thorough lane because of the construction happening on our softball fields. Haven't received any phone calls of complaints myself, so people must be just gritting their teeth and bearing it, or maybe somebody else is getting those phone calls. But the hope is that will be done by December 31st, and we can open up that lane again and those parking spots. Outside of that, I am open to any questions or comments. Or Becky, maybe you want to talk about some district initiatives or topics that folks might be want to know, and then I'm happy to answer any questions either in the chat or obviously through video.
The things that I would bring up to everyone is one, the district will be hiring a new superintendent this year. That's one of the big tasks, one of the most important responsibilities the school board has is hiring the leader of our district. And our current superintendent, Don Grotting, has been with us 5 years and has announced his retirement. So the school board has hired a outside firm, and we're in the process of having listening sessions. I don't know if any of you have been invited to those, but it'll be listening sessions with parents, with students, with staff, with community members. And then also a survey will be, one survey has already gone out. We're going to be doing a second survey. And then the job will be posted around the state, around the country in January. And then we'll start the interview process. And the school board, our plan is to have someone named right around spring break. So we really want encourage you as parents and community members to let us know what you think the future of Beaverton School District looks like and what that leader should look like. So I encourage you to do that. The other thing the school board is contemplating is we will be voting in January whether or not to go out for a new school bond. Our previous bond is 8 years old and will expire at the end of the school year. And that is paid for things like Mountainside High School and Sato Elementary and rebuilds of Hazeldale and Vos. And so it's been 8 years in the making. And now we're looking at a new bond and upgrading a lot. So we have Beaverton High School is almost 110 years old, parts of it. Raleigh Hills Elementary is almost Raleigh Hills K-8 is almost 100 years old. So we have some very old buildings with old parts, and even things like we were one of the first school districts to use bond money for IT, for the Chromebooks. Well, those now need to be upgraded. Security is always an issue of adding better fencing and better front offices and those sort of things. So the school board, and so there's also a survey out for that, and we would love community input on that. And the number one goal is keeping our students in school and keeping them safe. And I'm sure all of you have seen that we've had difficulty in having enough subs in all of our buildings. And that's not just subs for teachers, it's all of our different positions, whether it be bus drivers or nutritional services or para educators. And people just do not realize how many people it takes to run a school, to keep the backbone of a school. So we're doing job fairs right now. We have different substitute requirements. So I hope all of you will spread the word that we need more people in our schools so we can keep our students safe. And we keep following the state guidelines and working with Washington County to follow the guidelines so that we can keep all of our students safe as these vaccines roll out. So anyway, that's the only update, and happy to answer any questions you may have from a district level.
Thanks, Becky. You said that bond is May, is that right? That's coming out?
The board has not totally voted on that, but all the planning that we are doing, yes, it looks like it will be a May election.
Okay, more information to come on that potentially.
Yes.
You mentioned safety, right now it's sort of a hot topic, a hot button topic around the nation, just around school safety. You probably saw in the news, Reynolds Middle School is closing for 2 weeks due to, safety issues around fighting. We certainly have seen an elevation in student behaviors. I think it's all relative based on the individual schools, but we feel pretty fortunate that really hasn't been the case here. We've had maybe 2 fights, and they were at the very beginning of the year. Not really, knock on wood and all, but it's really been a pretty quiet in terms of that sort of student behavior. I know the middle schools are dealing with a lot of student behavior issues, some of the other high schools as well. Ours have been more individual, just in terms of kids really struggling with mental health, and that may be showing itself in some student behaviors. Of course, social media is always an issue, is in good times and in bad times. But by and large, I feel very fortunate that the school feels very safe and not anything like what you're hearing in the news right now. That can all change, obviously, but I think getting 1,800 kids back acclimated to being social with one another has been a hurdle for all of us. But our kids have adapted relatively quickly from what I'm hearing based on other schools. And not to say there haven't been some bumps, and now with grades, the 9-week grades coming out, I think there's a heightened sense of some anxiety because of expectations with grades. And we'll continue to work with kids. Our Behavior Health and Wellness Center is up and running, and kids are seeking it out and getting a lot of support there. So that's been really beneficial this fall too. If there are any questions, again, or comments, feel free to list them in the chat or.
Yeah, there's a question about that someone's kids say that there are fights almost every day in the commons or in the halls or bathrooms. We are not aware of that. If it's happening in the bathrooms and we don't see, no one is coming to us. Nobody who has, like Todd said, we have been dealing with fights, but they usually come right to us, and the assistant principals are the kind of the first line and the campus monitors, bring them to us. We have not seen that. We have, to Todd's point about discipline, we have seen more conflict among students, particularly 9th and 10th grade. I think there's, it's not physical conflict, but kids that, don't really like each other very much, or they come to us because they feel like they have an issue with another student. And so we're working with students to repair some of that if possible, or to, prevent it from escalating any further, but we have not seen physical fights.
No, and some of this, it's interesting because a lot of it is like kids had an issue in middle school, 2 years ago, and they haven't seen each other since then. And now all of a sudden we're dealing a couple of the issues we've dealt with, some of which have come from years past, and they've never resolved it, never had a chance to resolve it. So But yeah, there is certainly, we would know if there were fights happening daily here. That's not happening. We're aware of two, I think, as I said at the beginning of the year. Bathrooms. Yeah, I mean, bathrooms at any school are always a tough spot. But we monitor those as much as we can. We have our campus monitors and staff go through them every period, and during lunch, and we pop our heads in as much as we can. And we're fortunate that sound carries there's no doors. And so if there's sound coming from them, staff easily can hear what's happening as well. So yeah, we are constantly monitoring bathrooms.
Yes, and absolutely. If somebody knows of a fight and we're unaware of it because it happened in a bathroom when there happened to not be somebody checking the bathroom, we would love to know, because the last thing we want is for students to feel unsafe in any part of our building. So please do. And, we try to keep student privacy, so if a student comes to us and says, hey, there was a fight in the bathroom and I think it was between, so-and-so and so-and-so, if they know the student's name, we don't bring those students in and say, hey, Mary told on you. We try to keep the reporter's name confidential, and so that they don't feel any blowback or anything. So yes, please have students report. We want to know.
We also have brand new cameras up and around in the building. Unfortunately, there's some networking issues with the district, and there's some sort of software issues. So they're not fully functioning right now, but the cameras are also a big assistance to us and knowing in real time what's happening in our halls. And our campus monitors are constantly circling the hallways and checking in with the bathrooms. Each one of them is assigned a floor.
I will say that we have to work a little harder to have the women's restrooms monitored, because our campus monitors are all men. But we do have some female grad mentors and counseling secretary who help us, and bookkeeper who help us and do some of the rounds with that. So we do try to monitor all the bathrooms.
Winter formal. Yeah, it's not, we are planning, it's not a formal, but we are planning a dance for January 28th, I believe. It's our Stuff the Stables dance. It's a complete fundraiser for Make-A-Wish. We have a student already chosen. We have that information that just went out to staff and students, I think, a couple days ago. I believe it's an elementary student, and her wish is a hot tub, of all things, and which she already has. So then we backfill that by fundraising for her, for Make-A-Wish. And the current plan is January 28th is a boys basketball game against Southridge. We were trying to do a double header with girls and boys. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll do a split assembly like we did in homecoming. We'll recognize our Make-A-Wish student. We have staff dares. There's all sorts of things, a lot of fun things that go along with that. Kind of a spirit week. We'll have the game on Friday night, and basically kids buy a shirt, and that shirt is their ticket into the game and the dance. And so they come to the game with the shirt, and then from the game, we'll have them enter for the dance right after the game. And again, their shirt is their ticket in. So that's currently planned for January 28th. We are working with the other high school principals. Other schools do more of a Saturday formal off campus. We have not done that. A couple other schools don't do that, but we are planning a dance. The thing to keep in mind is we cannot guarantee 6 feet separation at something like that, obviously. So know that if there is COVID case, unfortunately, if a student is unvaccinated and we cannot ascertain their whereabouts as a close contact, then potentially any student who went to the dance unvaccinated potentially could be quarantined for those up to 10 days. So that's the case in any, lunch or game, because we cannot guarantee the 6 feet. It's important to understand that is a risk, so to speak, that kids are taking by attending because of that. Otherwise, we just wouldn't have it. We wouldn't have the dance, because there's no way you have a dance and have 6 feet of separation. Kind of defeats the purpose. But we're also trying to create high school experiences for these kids too. So fortunately, we did not have anything happen after homecoming that was related to kids being at homecoming in terms of a COVID breakout. So nobody was quarantined at that dance, but that was outside. This is inside. So there is another level related to that. tends to be a smaller group. And we had 1,200 kids at homecoming. Typically at the winter formal, it's more like 600, but that's still a lot in an enclosed space. Good question. More information to come on that. Yeah. Yes, we are trying to recreate those high school experiences. What I think has been fun this year is, boy, kids are going and doing more than they ever have. Like, just they're attending events, they're supporting one another, because I think they realize what they missed out on for that year and a half. And so they really are very attuned and experiencing life, which I think is really fun for us to see, as long as they, of course, do it appropriately. Any other questions, comments, future topics?
So there was a question about, we have a couple of long-term subs, and there was a concern with that, and I can work with that parent directly. And then somebody was asking about, do we have international exchange students this year?
I don't think we do. Yeah, I don't think the
either.
district opened us up this year to exchange students, obviously with COVID precautions. So I don't think we do. Usually we have anywhere from 5 to 10 typically in a given year, but I think they're going to be extra careful this year and not open us up to that.
Yeah, we definitely have some international students who are new to us this year, but they're not specifically exchange students.
Yeah.
Hey, Todd, I'll ask my question not in the chat because I've been trying to type it and have been unsuccessful in finding the right words. So question, does the school have a point of view on social media accounts that are called just generic Mountainside this, that are really starting to point at individual kids? Obviously, it's beyond your control. It's not something that you administer, but my observation is those things are like growing out of control in the last couple of weeks. I'm just wondering if you guys have a point of view on that.
Yeah, this is where it comes into the freedom of speech for kids and what we can control outside of the school day. And that's where social media can be our biggest friend and it can be our biggest enemy. My recommendation, I've had a couple kids email me about some of these accounts, is to report them to Instagram. That's the best way to do it. And then Instagram can take those accounts down. We can't really do much about it. We've had in years past, we can bring a kid down and say, you're not permitted to use our likeness. You're not permitted to use our name. And we can go that route if we know who the student is. But a lot of times these are anonymous accounts and we can never, or they create a dummy account, with a fake email address just to create the account. But if we know who it is, we can address it. The best way though is to go through the actual social media platforms.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, they all use the Maverick logo.
Yeah. And it's Mountainside this, and every high school has them, and they're really frustrating because it's like pinning Jello to the wall. They just, you eliminate one and another 3 pop up. We just don't have a lot of control over them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I will say again, if as parents you hear who is manning the account because your kid lets it slip, we'd love that information, because we'd love to be able to talk to the kid and say, hey, you can't be doing this. You can't be using our logo. You can't be saying things about other kids. And, we could try to address it that way, because it's one of the areas where students start to feel unsafe, as if people are talking about them based on school relationships, but they're doing it at home from their living room or bedroom on social media. So we do the best we can to try to limit that.
It's tricky. The Supreme Court just last June sort of shut the door on schools being able to really discipline students very much for anything outside of school hours. This was a cheerleading case, I believe. I'm not sure how it relates to safety. There's a threshold though, and that threshold is, does it create a significant disruption to the educational environment? That's a really hard thing to define. That gives us a little bit of leeway, but significant disruption is in the eye of the beholder. And what does that mean? You might be significantly disrupted, but is the entire school disrupted? So that's a really slippery slope for us. Becky, you guys have grappled with some of these concepts, haven't you, at the school board level?
Yes, and it's, finally someone when it was asking us, could we create a policy? And again, our attorney, it becomes a freedom of speech. And, if I was queen of the world, which, daily, I wish I could be queen of the world, as many good things as social media does do for the rapid communication, all that kind of thing, I would eliminate because it just seems to create so many more issues than, so yes, it is something we're grappling with. We even grapple with it with our staff. Where your personal and posting different belief, it's just, it's a very, very, very difficult thing to balance. So, and I know kids are just so, this is their go-to, and it's not just Instagram and Twitter. I mean, they find all sorts of different avenues to.
And I think it's the anonymity. That's the other piece that makes it even more difficult, because kids' frontal lobes, as we know, are being developed as we speak. But then when you have the veil of anonymity, they were saying things they wouldn't ever say to somebody in person. And that can be really cruel and hurtful and harmful. And we do a lot of campaigning around THINK as an acronym. Is it truthful? Is it helpful? Is it, can't remember. There's a couple other things. Do you remember what they were, Rebecca?
No, I mean, kind is the last one.
Fine.
I can't remember what the I and the N are. Integrity maybe doesn't have integrity, and
Yeah, and so
necessary, is it necessary?
Yeah, but I mean, kids are this is a creative outlet for them, and unfortunately, some use it in a very negative way. But if we have information, we will definitely do what we can to address it and make sure people know we're not connected to it in any way. We have one social media account. Outside HS, that's it.
Thank you.
If there, again, you can use the form to put any questions if you don't want to make it public in the chat here. I'll post the form one more time, kind of an attendance form, but if you want to put some, I'm the only one that looks at that. So if you want to put a question in there or a comment, I will look at it after the meeting for sure and get back to you with information if need be. If there's future topics, there's also a space for that if you'd like some additional information in our December meeting, which, by the way, right now is scheduled for Friday, December 17th, which is the Friday before the break. So I'm planning on having that meeting, but it is the Friday before the break. So don't be surprised if for some reason we're unable to have it just because of schedule conflicts on that day, and just wanting to be visible and out and about in the halls for students as much as possible on a day like that. So we're hoping today is going to be a real celebratory day, because I think next week it will be a nice reprieve and people can have time with their families and enjoy the holiday week, hopefully. So if there are no other questions, again, thank you for being a part of this. And I look forward to seeing you in December or at the Impact meeting or at any of our numerous events. Thanks, Becky.
Do you have a minute?
Sure. How about, hold on,
Do you need to take a break first?
I need to